So I wanted to just briefly mention 6 points. What sort of food system we would like to have. So I came back to China just in January to set up a research group to look at the food system in China as well as in other countries, the global food system. Then COVID-19 came. So immediately I shifted my attention to work with other researchers, the government, and even international players on how we can really deal with such a dramatic change in our global food system. So what I'm going to speak is, yes, is a lesson from you have just discussed, but also from my engagement with some of the global players, as well as regional players like India, Malaysia, and here in China. So 6 brief points. So number 1 is resilience will become very prominent in our future system. So even before COVID-19, we have already seen climate change, refugee crisis, many other things that are affecting our global food system. So now COVID-19, even before that, the bird flu, many sort of zoonotic diseases have already affected our food system. So this is a wake-up call. How can we really make sure that our future food system will be very resilient against all these shocks? We're doing a bit sort of soul searching. Now, obviously, to block the country, self-sufficiency is not going to work. I think many have already mentioned. But in the meantime, how can we address the weakest points of the whole food system, of the whole supply chain? From smallholders to processors, small traders to retailers, to global trade system. So where are our weakest points? I think this obviously varies by country, varies by different commodity chains, and definitely we have to look at that issue very carefully. The second point is inclusiveness. I think many mentioned that it's poor people, it's hungry people, it's lower income people who will suffer much more from COVID-19. I think the IFPRI 2020 Global Food Policy Report zoomed in on the inclusive system. I think, again, the COVID-19 showed how important our global food system must be very inclusive. So here, I think women, children, the smallholder farmers, the migrants, from rural to urban and even from urban to rural, they must be protected. They must be very inclusive. They must be included in our future global food system. The number 3 is, the sustainability and healthy diets. So I have seen some dramatic changes of people's behavior. So they are willing to change their diet, their behavior, to protect our natural resources, to protect the wild animals. They learn huge lessons from this COVID-19. Now, obviously land, water, all this natural capital have to be protected. I think, again, it's a wake-up call, not just for researchers, for government officials, but also every citizens. So what sort of food system they would like to see in the future. Now, number 4 is investment. How can we really prioritize our investment? So from this sort of crisis, we have seen that, yes, e-commerce is booming, internet is booming. So that's why it's very important to invest in e-commerce and internet access. Well, in China, Mr. Wang said we already have 1 billion people who have access to internet. But unfortunately, in many parts of the world, in Africa, they still do not have good access to internet. Even they do, the connection is not good. So we must invest there. Then I think the EID also mentioned about the rural roads. It is the place where they do not have access to rural roads, they suffer more, much more from COVID-19. Then R&D, the agriculture research investment. I think in the future, our research investment must lead to multiple wins. So not just the yield enhancement, not just the yield increase, but also the resilience. For example, the newer varieties must be able to tolerate drought, floods, heat waves, and so on. But now, obviously, diseases. I think this sort of multiple win technologies must be pursued in the future. So that's the number 4. The number 5 is institutions. We have also seen a lot of innovations in institutions to deal with COVID-19. Here in China, in India, and in Africa. So one particular case is a point-to-point delivery, a point-to-point contract. Yeah, we used to talk about the contract farming between farmers and that's companies. But now it's a contract farming, a contract between communities, farming communities and consuming communities in urban centers. Here in Beijing, I have seen every morning the trucks come to from certain villages to serve the whole village. So that sort of point-to-point delivery will be one of the innovations we will see in the future. And this will obviously affect the global supply chains. The global supply chains, particularly this multinational companies, still have a role to play. But how can really adapt to this new normal will be very critical. Then moving up, to global level, national level, and provincial level. So the global level, we still need evidence and data, particularly in food and agriculture area. So to avoid being politicized, we can learn a lot of lessons from health side. I think even in food and agriculture, to connect timely data from the micro level to share with everybody will be very critical to take action. Then let's say in the climate change area, there is a platform called Intergovernmental Agency for Climate Change. So in agriculture food area, can we set up a similar platform? Let's say Intergovernmental Agency on food systems. So we can really bring data evidence together, avoid being politicized, to pursue some of the common goals we all have. Then moving down to the province, China has this called provincial governors, the grain or bag policy, the mayor's vegetable or meat basket policy. So can we move down the responsibility to local government to make sure that they can help to protect the poor and hungry people during crisis? Then obviously down to community level, I already mentioned. Now the number 6 point is the global coordination and the collaboration. Again, I think unfortunately the world is very much divided, one versus another. I think in the food and agriculture area, there are some good news, like G20. G20, the first time the ministers of agriculture came together very quickly to come up with a declaration without even meeting face to face. So I really appreciated that effort. So G20 countries represent probably 80%, 90% of the global economy, global food and agriculture production. If they come up some of the declarations, not to use export bans, to help the poor, to make sure that the value chain continue to work, I think this is a very big deal. Then global institutions like WHO, WTO, FAO, CGIAR, they also come together to form some sort of a working group to connect the data, share the information. So I do see some sort of encourage movement from there. Then we must do more to make sure that we can coordinate, we can collaborate to avoid some of the crises probably we can avoid. If we don't do it, we will see some of the humanitarian crises probably we have never seen for years. So thank you very much.